We're at the North Carolina Botanical Gardens in Chapel Hill, and these gardens are operated by the University of North Carolina. Today we're going to visit with Peter White, the director of the Botanical Gardens. Hi Peter, how are you today?
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
I noticed on our way in that your sign read you are a conservation garden. What does that mean to you?
Well, it means that we're really interested in conserving nature and native plants. We have lots of programs that are aimed in that area. Everything we do, we try to aim towards conservation.
Okay, and I notice as I look around the gardens that pretty much everything you're growing is native. Right down to the water gardens that are behind us. I find that very interesting.
Yeah, the North Carolina and the Southeast are one of the most diverse places in the plant kingdom, and we have spectacular plants for gardens and spectacular diversity out there in the wild.
And it's a little bit different for a botanical garden. A lot of times you go to a botanical garden and you see all these exotic plants showcased, but right here you're featuring what grows in our own backyards.
Yeah, and there's some great plants. You can do everything in color and flowering and seasonality, and yeah, lots of great plants here on display.
One of the areas I noticed is you have a spectacular native border, mixed border over here. And what are you using that more for, not just for growing plants, but also you're collecting the seeds as well?
Yeah, that's that border that you saw has our rare plants, and one of the projects we do is the conservation of the most endangered species in the Southeast through germplasm samples. That is, through having enough genetic diversity as a last resort against extinction in the wild, that the garden can play a positive role in making sure those species don't go extinct.
Okay. And you mentioned North Carolina has this incredible plant diversity, and this is an incredibly unique garden. We're standing in the Carnivorous collection. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Sure. The carnivorous plants, the Southeast is one of the global hotspots of diversity. Some 40 different species of insect-eating plants live in the Southeast. These carnivorous plants, as you can see, are green. That is to say, they photosynthesize, and they use the insects as a kind of mineral supplement pill. You know, they've convinced insects to gather nitrogen and phosphorus out in the landscape and then deliver it by flying in. They don't use it for energy, but they do use it as a mineral supplement pill. And there are many unique species among those carnivorous plants in the Southeast. Probably the most famous is the Venus flytrap, and everybody knows that plant. Every botanical garden has to have that plant. I have photographed that plant all over the world, in South Africa and Japan and Sweden and England and France, and just seems that every garden has to have it. It's so unique. There's nothing like it. Not many people know that its total world distribution is a small 60-mile circle around Wilmington, North Carolina. Just a little bit of South Carolina and a little bit of North Carolina. Nothing like it anywhere else in the world. It's just the most interesting and fabulous plant. And we have these plants here to tell the story not only of the uniqueness of these plants, but also their relationship to soil. They live in a very sandy, acid soil. That's why they need the nutrient supplement pill. And these plants also have a relationship to fire out in the wild, because if you don't burn those habitats, they get so crowded that small plants like this get overtopped.
Another interesting aspect to your carnivorous collection, you'd mentioned that you do a little bit of selection for new cultivars, and I thought the reason behind that was very interesting. Yeah,
one of the projects that we've started here we call conservation through propagation, which means that if you make unique plants available in gardens, that might reduce the pressure to collect plants in the wild. And carnivorous plants are so famous that there are hobbyists that will go look for them in the wild. Well, we started with a man named Larry Mellichamp at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, a project to hybridize unique forms of pitcher plants for the trade as a way of developing a unique offering from gardens that you couldn't find in the wild and that would reduce damage to wild populations.
So just another way to protect what's out there. As I've been walking through your gardens, I see you have some collections of representing different native habitats throughout North Carolina, which of course feature some of these native species. Why don't we go take a look at one of those?
Sure. We're in the coastal plain section of our habitat gardens. North Carolina has three physiographic sections: the coastal plain, the Piedmont, and the high mountains. So we've got all of those represented at the garden. The characteristic forest of the coastal plain section of the state is a kind of pine forest called longleaf pine forest, named for these wonderful pines that have very, very long needles. And they often grow in sparse density so that it's rather savanna-like, which means that underneath the pines there's tremendous diversity in the wildflowers and shrubs.
You can see that here.
And that diversity and that savanna-like structure is maintained by fire, by frequent fires. In fact, this part of the garden we burn every year. And we developed that as a public school educational project too. So we had fifth graders out here and we filmed it and made it into an educational lesson about the ecology and conservation of the North Carolina coastal plain.
Okay. And I can see some of the burn marks on the trunks of the longleaf pine.
Yeah, so these trees are adapted to fire in many different ways. They grow bark very quickly, which means that near the ground they're insulated from the hot temperatures of the fire. They also bolt up quickly so that they don't branch much near the ground. Once they get to canopy height, they do spread out to the side and look like a normal tree, but meanwhile, as they're growing upright, they're very narrow without many branches to get above the flame height of the fires that sweep through this habitat.
And you shared an interesting bit of trivia with me. This is also the source of the name Tar Heel as well.
Right. The longleaf pine was famed for its resins. So you cut with an axe stripes in the tree and you put a bucket on the tree and you collect those resins. And they were very valuable. It was one of the most important exports of North Carolina in the 1700s for shipbuilding. And that sticky stuff from the tree would get onto the sandy soils of the coastal plain, and folks would walk around, somehow get this sticky stuff on their heels. And then when troops in the Revolutionary War were very brave and didn't retreat under fire, instead of saying these troops were brave, the other soldiers would say, oh, those are the tar heels, because they're stuck to the ground from this tar that's on their heel from the naval stores industry.
That's a very interesting story, because we don't often think about how plants relate to some of our history, our cultural history.
Yeah. Many different cultures have lived in North Carolina, and up until the modern times, you know, people knew plants, and they had remedies, they had uses, they had all kinds of understanding of the useful things that plants do for us.
Well, and that's part of what you're doing here, is trying to educate people about the plants around them and how useful they really are.
Yeah.
I noticed also you have a wonderful new education facility coming in here, which is going to help you do that even more. Do you want to mention a few of the highlights of that? I know you're very excited.
Sure. This is an exciting time. We've so much outgrown our existing building that we've built a new education center. That new project is really three buildings in one. It's a classroom building, a public service and information building with exhibit space, and an auditorium building. And it's just wonderful to see that the garden can really grow its educational programs into this new space.
And true to the conservation aspect, it is a LEED certified building as well. So.
It's been designed to achieve the platinum certification from LEED, which is the highest standard within the LEED certification system. And if so, it would be only the fourth platinum building in North Carolina and the first one that's part of any of the university campuses. So it has many wonderful environmental features: geothermal heat pumps, photovoltaic panels, a rainwater collection system for gardening, so that we can show folks how to grow gardens with the rainfall that falls on the site.
Wonderful. It looks like it's going to be a wonderful opportunity for you, and you have beautiful gardens, so thank you for sharing with us today.
Well, you're welcome. We can't wait to show it off to more people.